Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Zim's Beer Review. I'm your host, Garrett Zimmer. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for tuning in, following however you may follow, whether it be podcast on iTunes or live streaming on YouTube or following on Twitch even. Thank you for tuning in. We got a little bit of a different beer today. This is actually my own homebrew that I'm going to be reviewing. I thought it'd be kind of something fun, something different to do. Not a whole lot to tell you about the brewery because it's just myself, so this one will probably end up being a little bit shorter. I wanted to show you guys the beer right away. The head on my beer is already dying down quickly. Normally I haven't poured it in the glass yet. Usually I open it with you guys on stream, but because this is a home brew, I actually have this in a keg, in a keg out in my garage, and so I had to go get it before I started streaming. And my head started dying down right away. So I had to start and show you guys the beer right away, or else there was no head. This actually had about an inch and a half of head on it coming out of the keg. So what this is my home brew that I brewed. I don't know the exact date. I want to say early November. And the only reason I really know that without looking through my notes is because I knew I wanted to have a homebrew beer ready for the holidays, and I really wanted it ready by Thanksgiving. So that was my goal, and I was kind of late to it. Thought about it late. The holidays started sneaking up on me a little bit quicker, and so I actually did something different that I had never done before, and I did an extract brew. And I don't know if any of you guys brew out there, if you've ever brewed, I don't know. There's really two main types of beer brewing. There's all grain and there's extract. And I'll give you guys a really, really quick rundown of how you make beer. Most of you who watch this, you might already know, but maybe you don't. So I'll give you a really, really quick rundown. Almost all beers start from grain, whether it be just different malts or wheat or, there's hundreds of different grain strains that it may be, depending on the type of beer you want to brew. So you get those grains, they mash them up really small, and you get hot water, and you literally just steep those grains in hot water. And what that does is it extracts the sugars from the grain and into the water that you have. So when someone says they're doing all grain brewing, what they're doing is they're making that, it's called wort. It's that sugary water that you get. They're making that themselves from steeping grains from their, whatever their grain bill is for whatever beer they're going to make. Steep those grains in hot water, extract the sugars into that water, remove the grains from that water, and you're left with super sugary, sweet water. And if you know anything about the alcohol process, when you add yeast to that sugary water, the yeast is going to eat the sugars and give off alcohol, which is how you get alcohol in your beer. So there's a couple other steps through the process, but basically that's how you convert sugars to alcohol. And the difference between all grain and extract is how you get those sugars. So in an all grain, it's like I said, extracting the sugars straight out of the grain via hot water. An extract brew process is you buy a kit, and it comes with a container of extract. And that extract is like super, super sugary, really thick. It's like molasses syrup almost. It's super sugary, and you add that to hot water and you get the sugary water that way. So you're not extracting the sugars from the grain, you're just putting the sugar straight in from the container you bought. It's quicker. It's usually the way that people get into brewing because it's easier. You don't have to go through the buying of the grain and figuring out how much grain you need, how many pounds of grain per gallon of water. And there's a lot more to it because you got to keep the temperature ranges right. when you're steeping your grain. So a lot of people will start brewing beer doing extract brewing just because it eliminates a step, but you still are brewing. It's not like it's not, it's easier, but it's not like a cheat. You know what I mean? It's just a different way of brewing that's easier. I personally, when I got into brewing, I didn't even know that extract brewing existed, which is kind of funny in hindsight now that I know about brewing. Almost everybody who I know now who's gotten into brewing started with extracts simply because you can buy the kit. I got into brewing because my mother-in-law bought me a beer brewing kit for Christmas one year, and it was just brewing 1 gallon of beer. Now I brew about 5 gallons at a time, sometimes up to 6 gallons. This was just 1 little gallon of beer, and it had the grains in there already. So I just went through the brew process on Christmas Day in my kitchen, on my stove, using my wife's pots and pans, and I just thought that was the only way you brewed beer. And so then my natural progression, once I realized that I liked it, was to just scale up. But I never even considered that there was another option. I just stuck with all grain brewing. And so that's what I've done through every one of my beers that I've brewed up until this holiday season. Well, I guess it was last holiday season, now that it's 2018, when I needed a beer quickly and I had a short day and I just wanted to get it done. I ran down to my local Dr. Fermentos here in town, and he's just a local brew shop, and I bought an extract kit just to get it done quickly. So this was actually a first for me, is brewing this. So I'm going to review this, and I'll kind of tell you what I liked about my beer, what I didn't like about my beer, what I would do differently next time, and what I thought of extract brewing. So we'll go ahead and give this a try. If you can see the color on this, it's deep brown. The box listed it as being black, but it's definitely a deep brown. It's also hazy, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But this is a pumpkin spice porter. This is, like I said, an extract. If you're watching on YouTube or on Twitch, I put the box on screen so you can kind of see what it looks like. But if you're curious, just search Brewer's Best or Northern Brewer. There's a whole bunch of companies out there that do it. But this is a pumpkin spice porter for the holidays. So we'll go ahead and give this a try. Right off the bat, and I'm going to act like I haven't had this beer 100 times already. Right off the bat, it does taste like a porter. It has a coffee flavor, a lot more coffee flavor than I actually would like. This was the first porter I have ever brewed. I never have made a porter via all grain before, and so I didn't really know what to expect with a home brewed porter. So my first porter I made was an extract, and it's very coffee flavored. It does taste like chocolate a little bit, but more coffee than other beers I've reviewed on this channel, more than other porters that I've had just through my life. It's a lot of coffee, more than I would have put in here if I chose my grain bill, though. The pumpkin spice nature of it, I guess it's there. It's not very prominent. It's not in the forefront of the flavor. You kind of can smell it. You kind of can taste it, but you kind of do have to hunt for it in this one. I think if I gave this beer in a glass to somebody and didn't tell them what it was, I think they would guess porter, but I don't think they would guess pumpkin spice porter. This kit came with everything you needed to brew it, and in order to get the pumpkin spice flavor, you literally just added pumpkin spice seasoning. Like inside the kit was just a packet of pumpkin spice seasoning, just the powdered form that I added to the boil during the brew process. So kind of interesting that that's how it was done. I would have expected maybe like a pumpkin puree, and I bet if I did a all grain, that's probably how the pumpkin flavor would get into it, and then maybe add some cinnamon or coriander or something to get the spiciness. But I would have probably done a pumpkin puree, like pumpkin pie filling almost. But the pumpkin pie spice worked. I just don't know if it was enough for 5 gallons. Another thing with my beer, over your average pumpkin spice porter you may have, is mine is really hazy. I think I mentioned that earlier. It's like a wheat beer almost, that it's unfiltered, and it's unfiltered because it is unfiltered. When you do homebrew, you can get that the haziness out by adding these tablets to your brew process in your boil, and they're called, I want to say, Whirl Flock or Irish Moss. I don't own any. They're cheap. I should just buy them. But it doesn't add flavor to your beer. All it does is it coagulates all the solids that are floating into larger clumps, and then it allows them to fall out during your fermentation, and it just clears it up. So I didn't add them. The brew process did call for it, but I did not because I didn't have them. So that's something I would do differently, 100% next time. Didn't have that on hand this time, so I didn't add them. I do like the flavor. I really just wanted something for the holidays. I think next holiday season, I probably won't do another porter. Porters aren't my favorite style of beer. I was drawn to the pumpkin spice more than I was to the porter written on the box. I do like it, and what I can tell you right now, when I filled this up, my keg is almost empty, and I've been wanting to do this review for a few weeks now of my own homebrew, and I think I'm lucky I did it when I did, because I don't know how much more beer is left in that keg without taking a look, and I might not have had enough to do one in a week or two. So at least you got to see it, I guess. So as far as the extract brew process, what I liked about the brew process was it has all the information about the beer you're making right there. It has the alcohol content that you should be getting. It has your original gravity and your final gravity that you should be getting. It has the flavor notes. It has everything that you should get out of your beer testing wise, because it's so foolproof. I mean, everything that you're putting into your beer was given to you in a box, and as long as you use it all, you should come out with the same beer every time. So in that aspect, it was nice. It was easier to control the final product. I felt a little more confident pouring my first glass out of this, knowing it was going to be good, not hoping it was going to be good, because I used an extract. I knew I followed the directions. It's like baking cookies. Unless you're like an avid baker, if you just kind of start throwing some ingredients together that you know go in cookies, but you're not measuring everything exactly right, or you're not following a recipe by the book, you're going to get cookies, but they might be different cookies every time you make them, as opposed to opening up a cookbook and following step 1, step 2, step 3. You're much more likely to get a consistent product that way. And it's the same thing with beer. Beer is just, you're practically baking. You're following a recipe, and as long as you do everything right, you should come out with the same beer. And in this case, your steps are really laid out. Every other beer I've done, there are steps, but it is way more open to interpretation. There's a lot more you can do to benefit your beer, things you can add. There's a lot of stuff you can do to ruin your beer. I've had pretty good luck with the beers I've made all grain wise, and so I wasn't really worried going into an extract thinking that I might ruin something, because it's almost impossible to ruin it given how easy they make it for you. But that's kind of all I really wanted to cover on this, was a little bit about the beer, let you guys know about the brew process, let you know my thoughts, all grain versus extract. Kind of simple. If you're interested in brewing, you just go buy a kit. They sell them at Bed Bath & Beyond. I want to say that's where I got my first one for Christmas that year. I think it was Northern Brewer. It's just a small little kit. It comes with everything you need in the box. They're cheap. You can get everything you need to brew 1 gallon of beer, step by step, all grain or extract, for maybe $60. You'll have everything you need. Give it a try. If you don't like it, no harm, no foul. You have 1 gallon of beer, and hopefully you had a fun Saturday. But if you do like it, that's awesome, and that's what happened to me. I encourage you just to go try. You can't go wrong. I mean, okay, you can go wrong. There's a lot you can do wrong with with brewing beer that you'll have to learn. It's a great hobby. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy. It's what prompted me to want to even start this podcast, was I had so much fun brewing beer, and I enjoyed it so much, and I learned so much more about beer in general, with the flavors, the grains that go into it, the brewing process. It gives you a different respect for what these breweries do, and you see them make I know what it takes to make 5 gallons of beer. I can't imagine some of these craft breweries are making hundreds or thousands of barrels of beer a year. It's and making it so consistently. It's really an art. It's not as easy as you might think when you go down to the store and you just take it for granted that there's always going to be Coors Light sitting in the freezer or the fridge there that you can go grab. There's a lot more to it. And then when you take that next step up to craft brew, beyond the Coors Lights and the Bud Lights and those, to the craft brew, where you really start to narrow down the flavor, and there's so much more you can do with it. It's an art, and it gives you a better respect for what they do. So anyways, like I said, if it's something you're interested in, or you think you might be interested in, take a shot. Go try. Buy a kit. Look up a video online. There's tons and tons of resources on YouTube. You can watch people brew their entire batch. They review it. There's a lot of guys out there that have great YouTube channels. Check them out. And if you have any questions, feel free. Send me a tweet. Send me an email. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Zim's Beer Review. You can find me on YouTube at Zim's Beer Review. I'm also on Twitch. If you want to send me an email or get in touch with me that way, send an email to zimsbeerreview@gmail.com. I'd be happy to help anybody out or answer any questions that anybody may have. So I'm going to put a link to Brewer's Best in the description of this video and this podcast. So if you're interested, click the link. It takes you to a website with all your brewing needs. Anything you could come up with, they're going to have it. So I'll send you a link there. And I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy drinking.